Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pharmacy in Phlux. I'm your host, Derek DeRosier, and my co-host,
I'm Phil Hauser.
We're glad to have you on board for this episode, and we're really excited to have a guest with us today, Cathy Wang. Cathy is a young entrepreneurial-minded pharmacist who recently went through the acquisition process about a year ago, so she's coming up to 1 year of ownership in owning her pharmacy, which is located in Vancouver, pretty much at the corner of Georgia and Denman Streets. It's called 360 Care Denman Pharmacy. And we're going to have a conversation with Cathy today about her experience in going through the acquisition process. So welcome, Cathy. We're glad to have you on board.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, and it was a pleasure to working with both of you.
Thanks very much. So let's start out with kind of a general question and just get some thoughts from you in regards to, from an overall broad perspective, high level viewpoint, what was your experience like going through the pharmacy acquisitions process for the first time?
Well, there's a lot going on. I could talk about a whole day about it, but I think we only have half an hour or so to talk about that. But the whole acquisition process, there was just a lot of going on, especially for the first time being an owner. And as a pharmacist, we're not being taught how to do business. So it's basically learning from scratch, a lot of learning curves. And there was a lot of emotion, a lot of stress, but definitely working with these two gentlemen helped me guide it throughout the whole process, make it doable, which is make me who I am today. But starting from the beginning, I have no idea where even to start the process. Where the heck do I start about purchasing a business, or where even to know where the pharmacy on the market, right? Because you don't go real estate website to Google pharmacy on the market. So you need to look for the expertise to help to start for looking for a pharmacy to begin with. So I think that's definitely a step to know what are you looking for and where the location is very important in my opinion.
So when you started, did you have a company formed at that time? Did you have a business plan? Where were we at in those two facets?
No, nothing, none of any of them. So I have no company, no business plan to start with, because I don't know when is this pharmacy going to come, because I want to wait for the pharmacy with at a good time, a good location, a good opportunity for me. So I didn't want to rush into starting a corporation, worry about all that stuff until I have a pharmacy in plan. And obviously I have no business plan or no business finance background. That's still something I'm constantly learning. But Derek was great there to help me with business aspect of things as well, to walk me and help me to do that whole process, which is great because you cannot do a business without a business plan.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're going to borrow money from a lender, they're going to want to see a business plan, including pro forma financial projections for the business and whatnot. Yeah. And they're going to do their own due diligence on what that looks like before they're going to lend you money. Right?
And it's also like a great confidence for me to buy a business, to see the pro forma, to see what is my potential. Like I am investing a significant amount of money into it. You obviously, as an owner, entrepreneur, you want to make sure you can potentially make that money back, right? So that pro forma gave me a reassurance. Okay, I am doing, this is an investment as well. When you're thinking about that way, you want to have its payback eventually. So that pro forma gave me a reassurance in that way as well.
Let's jump back before we get into a few more of the specifics of the process. You said two words in your opening kind of response, and they were emotion and stress.
Yeah.
So let's expand on that a little bit, because I think those are important things, and they're very common things. And people who are going through the acquisitions process for the first time experience a lot of emotion, and I think they experience a lot of stress and fear about not only the process, but the fact that they're going to be in debt, for example, for a large sum of money in many cases.
Yeah.
So can you just expand on that a little bit more? What kind of things were you experiencing, and what helped to alleviate that for you?
Well, so emotion, there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, because this is, I've been practicing pharmacy for a couple of years, but obviously going to ownership, that's a different kind of worm you're opening. So we're talking about finance. That's something I wasn't sure, I wasn't comfortable with. So that brings you anxiety and things like that. And also not sure about how the whole process is going to go. So it was really helpful when we first sit down together and you walk through me, like these are the things and kind of timelines of what things I need to be done. So for example, I never thought about dealing with city about a business permit. That is something I just never being aware of
Right.
because you've never been a business owner. So like the timeline, what needs to be done first? What needs to be done then? What can be done together? Because you guys have such a wealth of experience. Like, this is how long the college will take. This is in between, you can do this and that. So there's a lot of overlaps. And so just to have that clear timeline, at least for me, it was really helpful because I like to see what coming up next. For me, I can plan it, then I work on it. It really helped me to organize things, and that brings down my stress level a lot.
Yeah.
And it was an emotion, like with the support from, I know I can have you guys there, and if I have anything, I'd probably call you guys a gazillion times during the acquisition period. And then email communication back and forth, that was really great. Just like, if I have a problem, a question, I can bounce it back to you guys. And you just have a wealth of network as well. If I needed anything, you just like, okay, talk to this person, talk to that. That really gave me another, alleviated my stress and thing. And obviously have a supportive family and people who support you, because you are doing, this is a huge financial risk as well, right? Make sure that is something you talk to your significant other or partner or family, whatever, have a backup plan as well, right? Because, knock on the wood, my pharmacy survived for a year and it will continue to grow. But entrepreneurship is not an easy thing, that we always know that first year is tough. So definitely have that support program there is great.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
Phil.
no, I was just going to say, so you found out, as most first-time owners do, that ownership is a process, not an event.
Yeah.
Was there, where in that process did you start to get more and more comfortable? Can you think of a point where the anxiety and sort of stress started to come down a bit?
It's actually only after maybe about a month to 3 months actually after I took ownership of the whole thing, because that's when I actually know inside out a little bit more how the background of the pharmacy runs, like all the paperwork, how to deal with a bookkeeper, accountant, lawyer, and things like that. Then that is when I'm actually more comfortable doing things, more understanding. Throughout the whole process, I'm not saying I don't have time, that I don't have stress. Obviously, once I confirm I have a bank loan in position, that was a huge relief. Negotiation with a landlord, that's lease reassignments done. So every single step, you get one bit of relief. So it was good. Eventually, once we signed all the paper, all the documents, the whole acquisition process was done. It was a huge relief as well. But not until when I'm the type of person I need to know when things are in control, then I feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of pharmacists have a type A personality.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. We probably do. I've always sort of asserted that one of the reasons people choose pharmacy as a profession is because they're scientifically minded and kind of type A personality people in the first place. And
For sure.
generally we're kind of like that.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. I was going to ask, it was kind of a unique situation in that Phil and I were actually representing the sellers of the pharmacy. We weren't representing you as the buyer, but yet you still found that we were able to provide a significant amount of resource support for you, even though our legal obligation was to the seller. Would you concur with that?
Absolutely. I think that's what really great about to mediators, things like you guys, because you're very unbiased. I find your opinions and presentation, obviously you're representing the seller, but you provide me with unbiased feedbacks. I think that was wonderful. And with the experiences that you guys bring from years in the pharmacy industry, that just a lot of credential credibility there. So I find that was great too, working with you guys for that purpose. And obviously that you represent the seller, but I think we end up with a pretty good common ground. I think I still really enjoyed my purchases until this day. I don't regret it. So.
Oh, that's good. Having no regrets after a year is always a really good thing, for sure. And I think, the whole process of acquiring a business, and whether in our position we're representing the seller or the buyer, it really always comes down to compromise. And a good deal is a deal where there's really usually some compromise on both sides of the equation, so that you arrive at some meaningful place in the middle somewhere that works well for both parties. And, that's what we're always trying to achieve, I think.
For sure, it's a relationship, right? I think it's a business deal is also a relationship that I know. I would like to think out of this business deal, I build a relationship with you two, and then I still constantly email Derek about my questions. And so I think it's a great a relationship and network I was able to build from there.
Well, and I think the other thing that's important about that aspect of the process in terms of having that is, and you sort of alluded to it as well, is that you gained a lot more comfort, a month and 2 months and 3 months after you're in the business. And part of that comes from the fact that you have a good enough relationship with the sellers that if we ever needed to go back to them to gain more information for you about the operation of the business after you acquired it, we were able to do so. And there wasn't an acrimonious relationship existing there.
For sure.
So that's important too. I
Yeah,
think.
it's very important for that.
So, just to back up a bit, when we had the opportunity to engage you and sort of help you with your process, we also had to get the permission from our clients to do so. So they were comfortable with that. And as you know, as part of our process, there's a lot of things that have to happen before you actually meet face to face with the owners. So when you finally got to that point, and we had what we call a due diligence meeting once we had a signed letter of intent, and you met with these guys, how did you find that experience? Was it easier or harder?
Well, it was definitely easier to meet them in person. And interestingly, pharmacy is a small world. So I actually know of one of the owner from previous work. So it is there's a lot of us, but it's a small network, I think. And it's very important to talk to the person in person because I think we're all people person, and that's why we're in the field of pharmacy. We like to interact with others, and once you put a face in there, you talk to them, you actually build that relationship with the seller as well, and that trust. You see that they're caring in their business, and that is make you a little bit more comfortable for that. And so due diligence process is quite important in my opinion, and that we're able to identify some issues, whether they have it before or not. But luckily, there was nothing really issues on the pharmacy, so it's a good reassurance as well.
Right, exactly. So the purpose of that meeting was for you not only to meet them for the first time and discuss some issues, but it's also an opportunity to open up secondary due diligence on your part. So you had the chance to review all the financial and performance documents of the pharmacy, and now you have an opportunity to go a little bit deeper. And so you found that was beneficial at that point.
Yes. I mean, I wish I could have known more what a due diligence really mean at that moment, and to maybe do even more due diligence myself. For example, it would be a good idea to actually work in the pharmacy for a day or to see how the process work, to understand how their workflow a little bit better and things like that. I think that's an important takeaway point I learned as well from being a new owner. It just jumping into it sometimes can be a little bit difficult, and we all have different like the way we work and things like that. So yeah,
you just said something that's interesting too, because we get that a lot is in these buy-sell arrangements where the buyer quite often will say, well, I'd like to come and spend a day or 2 days in the pharmacy and work alongside you just to see how things are in the workflow. And sometimes sellers are a little bit reticent to allow that to happen because they feel like they're giving away business information before you've actually come to a real agreement, and they kind of feel like maybe you're just trying to gain some knowledge about how a good business operates, and so those are a little bit tricky, and we've had those requests where the seller denies that sometimes. But I think what's important is for us, it's always to try to help people on both sides of the equation understand what the due diligence process is, and that you really have to take a holistic view of the business so that you aren't going into it with expectations that are built only on a small number of parameters that you haven't really looked at in an in-depth way. So you really need to dive in deep for sure, and that's important. The deeper you dive, the more comfort you're going to have, or the more discomfort you're going to have, and know and feel like it's the right decision or the wrong decision for you, right?
Absolutely.
So, So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done in the pharmacy since you've acquired it a year ago. And we know that you've made some changes, and one of the first things I want to ask you, just in general, is when you first were there after you took over as the owner, what was your experience like with the customers? Did you find that they had any sort of preconceived notions about new ownership, or were you able to sort of build relationships with them fairly easily and that sort of thing?
Well, so this is a independent pharmacy in the West End, so we're quite a diverse community in there. And then as an independent, it's always a little bit you want to build that community sense of relationship. So I think that was great. Is one of the previous owner was able to be there to help me to do the transition process. He was there for about a week to help me to introduce to some of the regular customers, and that was really, really, really helpful. So it's a great thing if you can build in that acquisition process of having some handover from the previous owner to the new owner, or if there's existing staff, if you can keep some of the existing staff, because you want to keep familiar faces in the business. It's a fairly competitive market, and you want to make sure that also to provide that transition continuity of care, because you might not know the client very well yet, and there's a lot of things that you cannot document on the patient's charts just by using your dispensing software, by knowing their history, knowing their little things. So those are a great value that the previous owner was able to provide to me during that transition period. That completely helped that smooth it out. In terms of what I've done to the pharmacy since I took it over, obviously, I'm trying to upgrade things to a little bit more modern technology. I'm building a computerized POS system for the front shop, electronized all the inventory system. We start doing electronic filing because of limitation of space in Vancouver. Obviously, I don't want to pay the rent just to put my filing cabinet in there. So that is something I personally done in terms of technology-wise to improve in the pharmacy. And everybody has a different personal selection in terms of front shop stocking and things like that. As a female, I bring a little bit more cosmetic and female-friendly product, and trying to change some lighting, painting, basically things just to refresh the interior of the pharmacy, to bring a little bit more friendly, moderate face to it.
Yeah, I think those are all great things to have done for sure. And what you were talking about there with the previous owner sort of being on board and even keeping staff, and if that's an option sometimes, you're really talking about goodwill. That's what you're paying for, and the goodwill of the pharmacy usually exists in the relationships that the owners have and the staff with their customers as well. And so having them on board is really helpful for sure. And I'm glad that you were able to have that experience for a bit as well. Now, you have a unique situation, which is maybe not as unique as some people think it is. There's a lot of pharmacies that have clinics either right next door or embedded within the pharmacy. You have a clinic embedded right in your pharmacy. It's part of your space under your lease.
Yes.
And it's our understanding that recently you've actually taken over ownership of the clinic. So the physician who was there was the previous owner of the clinic, but now you own the clinic and you're owning and operating the clinic, and the physicians are really just working in the clinic on your behalf. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. That's another leap of faith to jump into a completely different adventure within a year of a new venture. So in terms of that, I think is as great as being the pharmacy owner and manager to have a little bit control or ownership of the clinic, because you do obviously want to facilitate the clinician to make sure their process is as seamless as possible. We were trying to provide them a better, easier work environment by taking away that management. It's basically make sure the stock is ordered, HR, and things like that, so they can focus on their clinical duties. And I think that's a win-win situation for both of us. And then I can make sure that their working environment is a little bit more friendlier, a little bit easier, less stressful for them in terms of managing their staff and things like that. I think in terms of doctor and the pharmacist, we're all very similar in a way that we went to school, didn't become a business person or HR person. We went to school to learn about clinical skills. So, and doctors are known to be caring and things like that. So it's very hard for them to, try to manage their staff. So as an outsider person from the clinic to jump into that management role, I think I can provide some benefit for the clinic.
So essentially, as the clinic owner, though, you're now responsible for having the medical office assistant to the receptionist, staff person. They're an employee of yours. You're responsible for getting locums when the doctors want to take vacation and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. All that fun stuff.
All the good stuff. Now, without giving away secrets, I'm going to assume that the financial arrangement you've entered into with the doctors is a revenue sharing type of arrangement. So it's all based on their billings. Is that correct?
Yes, that's how most clinic works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's obviously the option as well as having salaried physicians, but I think a revenue sharing arrangement is more common because it actually provides a little bit more security for you in the sense that the physicians then know that their income is based on their billings, and the more that they are willing to work and the more billings they're going to do, the more income they're going to generate for themselves. And as you getting a percentage of that, the more you're going to get as well.
For sure.
As opposed to a salaried doc who says, well, my pay is the same on payday no matter what, so I don't have to work really hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also that give both of us a little bit incentive to work harder and things like that. So it's great. And obviously, taking over the management of the clinic, I'm not making money out of the clinic or anything. I just, the more I provide care for them and the more they kind of know me in terms of person as well, they trust my clinical skills in terms of my pharmacy side as well. So we build up that relationship clinically as well, because we will bounce idea of in terms of how management caring for certain difficult client or complex patients. And in terms of that, I build a stronger relationship with the physician, with the MOA there, making all of our work system. It's kind of like working in a small intercollaborative setting. Like we're not a hospital or anything like that, but once you have a doctor or pharmacy in a small setting, we are working in the team in that way.
So, my question is, Cathy's, a lot of pharmacy owners have put in clinics or have bought pharmacies with clinics. And a lot of them believe that as long as the clinic's there, automatically the prescriptions will come across the floor to your counter. We talk about it, Derek and I, in terms of capture rate, which typically would be very, very low. Now, what you started in what you just explained was building relationships, not just personally, but professionally.
Yes.
And identifying ways of collaboration. Have you seen that affect your capture rate or the amount of business that literally comes from the clinic itself?
That does help a little bit as well. And also just, I tend to tell my staff or my assistant, just doesn't matter which patient come in to see the pharmacy or see the clinic, greet the patient when they come in or when they leave the door. Because they do see us first, because as they walk through the pharmacy, just greet them, provide a friendly face. So there's a reminder to tell the clients when they're coming in and out, there is a friendly service pharmacy here as well. So we build, obviously, I'm not going to be pressure the clinician. It's not ethical or moral to do that for them to refer the patient to us. So I never want to pressure that onto the clinician. But once we build that relationship with the patient and the clinician, is when there's difficult situation happen, obviously with a certain other pharmacy and things like that, they will just always say, I have a pharmacy next door. Why do I even bother to go to some other place? I have to wait for a long time, and they don't even care about myself. So that is just a slow relationship building process. But in terms of capturing rate, it's always difficult because you obviously, the clinic is relatively newish compared to the pharmacy in the neighborhood. So you still have a lot of senior population who tend to would just go to where they're comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if there's other pharmacies, and we know in the west side of Vancouver, there's a lot of pharmacies in your area.
Yeah.
You're in a fairly highly competitive area for sure. But everybody is offering something different, and I think you've got a unique situation with the clinic right there. And
For sure.
You've hit the nail on the head with the concept of building relationships, because in the end, if the clinicians and the physicians in the clinic know what it is you're doing, what it is you're trying to achieve, and what kind of services you can offer, they're much more likely to refer patients to you for things that they know that are going to get done right by you.
For sure. That's one of the things I actually did is initiate a travel consultation kind of thing. Because with our pharmacy scope of practice, we can do quite a bit of travel consultation, especially vaccination, in terms of routine vaccination or travel vaccination. So whenever he actually have a client who want to see the physician for travel consultation, sometimes if they will refer the client to speak to me first. I can do a lot of history digging and background. And I developed template for questionnaire, and I developed template for prescriptions for that. And I share that resources with them as well if they are seeing the client for travel consultation, make their life a little bit easier. So we do share some resources and share a lot of client term that way.
No, that's great. So,
Yeah,
you're going to ask something?
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to kind of back up a bit. I know when we first started in discussions with you, Derek helped you build a business plan, and sort of when I mentioned before that buying a pharmacy is a process, not an event. Developing a business plan is not a project; it's a working document.
For sure.
So, have you found your business plan is something you've gone back and adapted and added to, and you see it kind of evolving as you move through your first year of ownership?
I mean, that's something I'm not very good at. I haven't really physically go back to change it, edit what I've typed down on the, but mentally I am thinking about what do I want to progress? Where do I want to go? I mean, what is my goal this year? What is my goal next year? I wanted to build and evolve something into that. So obviously this year, my big goal is to encourage myself and my staff to be a lot more familiar with travel consultation, because that's something we really want to push forward to. Not right now, but obviously in the future, Canadians are traveling a lot more, and in terms of providing that basic routine immunization as well.
Yeah, that's really good. And if the physicians in the clinic are on board with that, then it works well from a relationship perspective. And then once that's up and going the way you want it to be going, then you layer on something else, something new, and you'll eventually come to whatever those.
And also like building, I've started going out in the community, trying to build relationship with the community, as there's a really, I think 500 or 600 residents subsidized building by government. So I go to that building regularly to talk to the building manager, sometimes provide a little bit of talk on certain education topics, and we'll go there for flu shots when the flu shots due, and then do just the general health and wellness, and to see what they need, kind of, because this neighborhood is relatively new for me. I want to see what the neighborhood needs, right? That's what I'm here to provide.
That's great. So now that it's been a year, and I think you said this earlier, any regrets, looking back over the course of the first year, is there anything that you might say to yourself, wow, I would have done that differently if I knew then what I know now, kind of thing?
I mean, there are always tough periods throughout this whole year. I should say after right now, I don't think I regret the whole decision, but I wouldn't say I never had that idea popped up. So in terms of what I would have done better is when I purchased this pharmacy, I know the pharmacy's been in the neighborhood for quite a few years. So I was always thinking I'm buying an existing pharmacy. I just can come in and work, and but that is a mindset I have to change. When I come in, I bring a different side to this pharmacy. It is a new pharmacy for me, and it is my baby that is growing. I keep telling everybody that is my baby. I lose sleep and sweat over it.
Good.
And I am growing with my baby at the same time. I'm learning as my pharmacy is growing. I'm evolving. It's a constant change. Especially with our scope of pharmacies constantly changing. We're trying to push forward our scope. I want to make sure my pharmacy is ready for that.
So what does the future hold for Cathy and your pharmacy and your growth plans? Do you plan on acquiring more pharmacies in the future or doing different things?
I mean, I think it's kind of addictive. Once you start it, you can't stop. And so obviously, if things goes well, I've never say no to opportunity. That's a kind of bad thing or good. You always overload your plate a little bit too much. But if a good opportunity comes up, I'll probably jump into it without thinking too much. And where I want to take the pharmacy is, I feel like with a lot of changes coming on with big box store and chains and potentially Amazon coming into the pharmacy scope, I want to be that neighborhood friendly face. Obviously, I'm an independent. I will not able to compete with any big box store and things like that in terms of price. That's not something I want to go. I want to make sure we're here for friendly service, that we think about the people in holistic 360 care. That's why the name, I changed the name to 360 care. I want to think about whoever coming in as a whole person, not just a prescription. not just a number. So that's where I want this pharmacy to go. And I'll just be a happy face. There's another day a client just come in to say, I was just thinking about you the other day. So I want to come in to say hi to you. And
That's
nice.
we have conversation whenever she comes in for, like, if I'm not too busy, 10, 15 minutes. She's a therapist herself. She finds a therapy to talk to with me. So that's kind of environment I want to build in the relationship. I have patient or client who come in just want to ask my opinions before they even talk to their doctor. So that's I find is really rewarding, and I want to encourage my staff to have that kind of relationship with the patient as well. So that's where I want it to go.
Excellent. So if there's maybe 2 or 3 nuggets of advice that you could give to another young entrepreneurial pharmacist who's going to go through this process for the first time, what would those things be?
Learn your finance. Obviously, I still have tried to struggle with my balance sheet. That is something you really have to know as an owner. And the other thing is just caring. I think if you care about what's going on in the pharmacy, if you care about your client, people see that caring. People come back for that. That's how I build a relationship with my physicians, because they know I care for the patient. They know they can trust me once the patient comes to me. That's how you build a relationship, the sincerity and caring. And that's how you can make the pharmacy better and grow.
Sounds great. Well, for now, we're going to take a small break and we'll come back right after this pause. Thanks very much, Cathy. We enjoyed having you with us today.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. We hope you enjoyed the conversation we had with Cathy Wang today. A couple of takeaways that I think I heard from the conversation with Cathy, Phil, was that it's important and very helpful to have an unbiased opinion from consultants like ourselves who can bring a broad view of the situation to both parties. So I think I heard that from Cathy for sure. I think I also heard that, there's a lot of different things that come into play, including emotion and stress and fear in these kinds of processes. And,
Sure.
Having access to professional help and good information and doing a good deep dive in terms of due diligence are all things that help alleviate those kinds of concerns over the course of time, to give the person comfort that, in fact, they're making a good decision. What kind of things did you hear from Cathy?
Absolutely agree with you 100%. Due diligence is a term that's used a lot today, and it can mean a lot of different things. And sort of what we try to do and what we tried to do with Cathy is try to narrow that down to focus on the things that were important in her process. And so, I think that we heard that from her today, that was, something that was beneficial to her. But there was also what we were able to do, and we didn't really talk a lot about it today, was there's other advisors we were able to bring into Cathy's process as well. And in future episodes, I think we'll talk more about that when we talk about the legal side of the transaction as well as the financial side of the transaction and so on. And that was also a big factor in helping Cathy get through a process successfully.
Yeah, for sure. And what's exciting for me to hear from somebody like Cathy is that a year out, she's still very happy with the acquisition, and she's made some positive changes in the pharmacy and really put her own stamp on the business and created something that's herself. And it's exciting to hear what she's done with the clinic and how she's zeroing in on special things like travel services, for example, travel consultations.
Absolutely, and that's certainly the future of independent pharmacy, isn't it? The ability to adapt and to provide services and products as well that other pharmacies aren't able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up this episode, again, we hope you enjoyed the conversation with Cathy Wang, and we hope that it's provided you with an opportunity to think about some of the things that you might be going through and that you want to learn more about, especially if you're going to be a first-time pharmacy owner and going through this acquisitions process yourself. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you back next time.